Hello, welcome to Wit's End. My name is Mike Walsh and I'm here to spoil your day. I never set out to say anything aimed at individuals. My targets are human stupidity, hypocrisy, prejudice in all its shape-shifting forms, and bad ideas that harm society. One such bad idea is political correctness. Like many bad ideas, it was born with the best of intentions. It was conceived to make the world a nicer, kinder place, a sort of earthly heaven where everyone is treated equally, where justice and harmony reign, and where insults and hurt feelings are banished forever. But it didn't work out that way. Somewhere along the line, things went horribly wrong. Political correctness became a form of liberal totalitarianism, telling people what they must think and what they must believe, no matter how absurd it is. To understand where it all went wrong, we must first look to the oppressed minorities and their discontents. The downtrodden of the world certainly deserve our sympathy, but the truth is they are just as rotten as the rest of us, perhaps more so. Poverty, lack of education and opportunity doesn't promote virtue or good behavior. Rather the opposite. One of the many persistent lies that infect our age is the lie that some sections of the human race are morally superior to others. Both the mainstream media and the social media push this lie for all it's worth. They push it because supporting it makes them feel virtuous, and it makes the downtrodden objects of pity, needing our understanding and support. So who are these pitiable creatures? In the West, they can be easily identified. The poor, blacks, gays, Latinos, lesbians, bisexuals, women, the disabled, and transgender people. According to the popular myth, all these groups are made up of gentle, generous, open-minded, intelligent, peace-loving individuals. These people would never break the law, get drunk, take illegal drugs, make racist remarks, insult their neighbors, beat their children, stab their significant others during a domestic, or do any of the nasty things that go on in the white middle-class suburbs. The admiration for these disadvantaged groups allows no dissenting voice. Those foolish enough to ask awkward questions are quickly brought to book. They lose their jobs and their reputations. They become unemployable, marginalized, outcast, disgraced, and shunned for their heretical skepticism. They are shamed and brutally silenced, crushed under the merciless jackboot of the social media. There is a snarling beast stalking the land, sniffing out heretics and free thinkers to devour. This beast is the most dangerous beast of all. It is a bad idea with popular appeal. The world is no stranger to bad ideas. Nazism was such an idea, so was Stalinism, so was Maoism. This particular idea was hatched like so many bad ideas in the cloistered hothouse of academia. In this case, Berkeley, California. It was conceived with the best of intentions to make the world a kinder, better place. Who could object to that? But like all bad ideas, it wasn't properly thought through. The consequences never fully considered. Today we are living with those consequences. The name of this beast is political correctness, aka woke. Its purpose is to purge the world of all those horrid evils that make people unhappy. To rid the world of insult and nastiness, to ban hurt feelings. A noble aspiration, a utopian ideal quite impossible to achieve. The prophets of political correctness aren't stupid. They know a perfect world is beyond human reach, but that doesn't stop them from grasping for the golden ring of perfection. The closer they get, the better the world will be. That's the theory. In practice, things are very different. As I understand it, political correctness is about language and the way we use it. As one definition states, and I quote, "The avoidance of forms of expression or actions that are perceived to exclude, marginalize, or insult groups of people who are socially disadvantaged or discriminated against," unquote. On the face of it, that sounds pretty reasonable. But there's a fly in the ointment, the word perceived. Who is this anonymous perceiver? Is it a single individual or a group? Maybe it's an outsider, not a part of the group involved, simply a witness whose perception might be wrong or biased. This is the fly that poisons the ointment. Perception is a tricky thing. It isn't always right. It's a feeling and often depends on our mood, supported by our likes and by our dislikes and prejudices. An innocent remark, an ill-judged joke, an inappropriate gesture, a silly tweet can be perceived as insulting, racist, or homophobic. The word perceived is not forensically precise. It opens the door to all kinds of cruelty and injustice. It is a kangaroo court where the accused doesn't stand the ghost of a chance. Perception is a quicksand made for victims. Open a newspaper on any given day and you're likely to find a story about some hapless person who's wandered into the quicksand completely unaware that they are about to be swallowed up by the social media monster, the ravenous offspring of political correctness. In the time it takes to smoke a politically incorrect cigarette, a life can be destroyed. A person who minutes earlier had a good job, a sterling reputation, and the respect of their community suddenly finds himself or herself unemployed, unemployable, politically shamed, covered in Twitter shit, their reputation trashed, respect turned to scorn, shunned by their friends. All it takes to accomplish the destruction of a life is just one person with a few hundred followers on Twitter to see something he or she perceives to be offensive. The perceived offensive remark is retweeted and the chain reaction begins. It races around the world with the speed of light, inciting outrage, stirring up hatred and dreams of torture. By the time our hapless victim has finished the politically incorrect cigarette, life as he or she knew it is over. The solid citizen has become a leper, a diseased, unclean creature, spreading pestilence and pollution, a disgusting horror to be avoided for fear of contamination. Does this seem right? How did a benign movement like political correctness morph into a vicious kangaroo court, a worldwide lynch mob? At some point, political correctness began to take on the characteristics of a new religion, a hard Puritan religion, without God and without forgiveness. In the early stage, new religions always are fierce and merciless when it comes to destroying its opponents and its heretics. This phrase is always unpleasant, if not downright evil. If it persists and is successful, the result is an era of stagnation, a new dark age. Lives aren't the only things being destroyed. Language itself is under attack. Perfectly good words are being stricken from the vocabulary. A few examples will suffice. Fat is forbidden. Mankind is offensive. Homosexual is beyond the pale. Housewife is abhorrent. Man-made is even more abhorrent. And sportsmanship is insulting to female athletes. There are hundreds, perhaps thousands of examples of the language being whittled down, shaped and twisted to suit a political agenda. Language written and spoken is one of the glories of the human mind. It is the device that allows us to think, to create, to communicate, to pass on what we've learned down the centuries. Language, along with mathematics, is what has lifted us from the cave to the penthouse, from struggling to survive monkeys to the lords of creation. We have become godlike creatures with the ability to penetrate every mystery, except the mystery of our own existence. Since language allows us to think, it is essential to change the language if we are to think correctly. There is no better book on this subject than George Orwell's masterpiece, 1984. George was a seer. He lived in politically correct times, a time when Jews were deemed to be parasites and slaughtered on an industrial scale. A time when Stalin's 5-year plans resulted in the starvation of millions. A time when communism promised hope and delivered only misery. He knew where good intentions lead. He understood that utopian dreams are nightmares in the offing. Read 1984. It is an antidote to the poisoned pabulum we are being fed by the politically correct Puritans, who casually destroy lives and language with the blasé cruelty of schoolboys pulling the wings off flies. Political correctness is a bad idea with popular appeal. It has all the credentials to attract the downtrodden and the dispossessed. More importantly, it appeals to the young, educated, privileged men and women who've never experienced a suggestion of racial or gender abuse. They jump on the bandwagon, eager to do something meaningful with their lives, like changing the world for the better. It appeals to crusaders, the warriors willing to march, to face the opposition and demonstrate their commitment to the cause. Such zeal won tremendous victories in the past. The civil rights movement in the 1960s comes to mind. I was there. I saw it happen. I saw the United States become a better country. But political correctness isn't making things better. It is making things worse. This altruism seems to bring out what Jung called our shadow side, the side that projects all our feelings of inferiority, self-loathing, guilt, and hate onto the perceived enemy. It's a desire to join a righteous cause, to give life a higher meaning, to serve the powers of justice and fair play, even if it means the destruction of innocent lives along the way. It's telling people what they must think and what they must believe. It is a form of liberal totalitarianism, and its punishments for doubt are terrible. Political correctness even has its own Room 101. I must admit that I've never been on Twitter, never even been tempted to investigate Twitter. From what I hear, I think I'd rather check into the Bates Motel or take tea in Ed Gein's front parlor. It sounds like a snake pit full of venom and hatred, a fiendish engine room manufacturing punishment and shame. Or maybe that's just my perception. People don't take political correctness serious enough. They snicker at its mention. They think it's silly. Yet they condone it in subtle ways they hardly realize. In Britain, there is a well-known middle-aged male artist who likes to dress up as a little girl. Not just any little girl, but a 19th century little girl, like Alice in Wonderland or Little Bo Peep. A harmless perversion in private, but in public it becomes something else. This guy is an exhibitionist. He likes to appear on talk shows with a bow in his hair and a cute frilly skirt. This is a man who deliberately makes himself ridiculous and expects not to be laughed out of town. He expects to be taken seriously, and he is taken seriously. When Little Bo Peep tiptoes in front of the cameras, nobody bats an eyelid, nobody laughs, not a titter. When a man deliberately makes himself ridiculous, he should be expected to be ridiculed. No such thing happens. The audience applauds. When Little Bo Peep speaks, everyone listens. It's incredible. Was I the only man in Britain to find this wildly hilarious? Nobody laughed because they know what happened if they... Nobody laughed because they knew what would happen if they did. They'd be immediately branded with a horrible name and find themselves chewed to pieces in the fiendish engine room of Twitter. One laugh and it would be game over. So they shut up and knuckled under. That's what political correctness does. It makes people afraid to laugh. Political correctness is sneaky. It is also unfair and hypocritical. While Little Bo Peep was wowing TV audiences in Britain with his cute little skirt and vapid remarks, another rather darker scenario was being played out across the Atlantic in the United States. A teenage girl was dressing for a prom. The dress she chose to wear was a red Chinese number. Big mistake. An even bigger mistake was to post photos of herself on Twitter. By the time the dance was over, this hapless teen had been ripped to pieces in the fiendish engine room, accused of an unforgivable crime, cultural appropriation. The poor kid was punished for trying to look nice. What a realm of contradictions is a strange, twisted world of political correctness. Little Bo Peep is applauded for gender appropriation, assuming the persona of an underage member of the opposite sex, while a kid in Utah is viciously attacked for daring to wear a Chinese dress. Does any of this seem reasonable to you? Bad ideas have darkened the world many times before. The Carthaginians sacrificed children to their god Moloch, tossed their squalling infants into the flames because they believed such a practice would bring a good harvest. Humans are gullible. They can be made to believe anything. They can be persuaded to do the unthinkable if their faith is strong enough. So we must be very careful in our choice of beliefs. If we aren't careful, we could find ourselves marching backwards into a new dark age of ignorance, superstition, and terror. A place where books and babies are fed to the flames. Well, what do you think? Are the oppressed more virtuous than the rest of us? You tell me, but be careful to whisper your answer. You never know who may be listening. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and click on the link to my website in the description below. Until the next time, stay frosty, stay skeptical, and never wear overalls to work unless you're a farmer.